We've always found that when we come over the hill and drive down Pearl Beach Drive, enter there and look to your left, you just got that feeling of peacefulness.
And you get that view.
Everybody always says when they come over the hill, it's like coming into a magic kingdom. Brilliant, beautiful.
And then you came to the water. It was an unexpected jewel. It still is a magical place.
In the beginning, there were banksias on the dunes overlooking the beach and on the sandplain in the valley behind. The banksias were interspersed with angophoras, their sinuous pink and pale orange branches, while cabbage tree palms formed clumps on the banks of the three creeks draining the valley. Pearl Beach is a saucer-shaped hollow, worn by water from a bed of sandstone. Creeks have carved the hollow, while waves chew at the edge.
That's the centre of my great-great-grandfather's universe, Bungaree. Went around to stay with Matthew Flinders. I'll give you a brief rundown on how it would have been. We would have been up in the hills for a particular season of the year, maybe hunting wallabies or kangaroos. And then the wattle would have come out, and the wattle would have told us, get down to Pearl Beach, because the mullet are running. And it also would have told us when the whales are coming up the coast. So we'd go down to Pearl Beach at a particular time and we'd eat all our yams, a net for mullet, and it just would have been the most beautiful place in the world.
Now this scene overlooks the famous Pearl Beach. It makes a very beautiful picture. Now, this is not one of those romantic palm-covered islands you read about in the South Seas, but one of the beauty spots of the world, with its health-giving sunshine, glorious beaches, wonderful, vigorating air from the southern Pacific Ocean. Oh. Another view of Pearl Beach. Do you notice how the sand has been formed into the shape of a large shell? And looking down from a height of 185 feet at the natural rock swimming pool, that's at the other end of Pearl Beach.
The estate agent Staples acquired the land and organised the subdivision, an elaborate brochure with lots of interesting photographs produced by Staples. He then employed people who were out of work and put them on a train at Woy Woy and said, go and sell blocks of land. He pushed them in the direction of Eastwood and Epping and Beecroft. And a lot of the early buyers of the £6 blocks of land and £10 blocks of land came from that part of Sydney.
In West Ryde, and he came along Hermitage Road where the family lived, and he showed them the Pearl Beach, this new development.
The very first buyers were a couple of sisters.
These two sisters, Rosie and Daisy, they built what we believe to be the first house in Pearl Beach in 1926.
The whole family bought into Pearl Beach at the same time.
Many of them were retired school teachers, some were ministers of religion, but a very respectable lot of people.
First handful of people who bought land, they all chose blocks up the creek for the simple reason that that was the source of water.
You really want to know what the house was like? How my mother ever managed, I will never know.
We had no services in as much as there was no sewage service, there was no water, there was no electricity and no garbage collection.
Sometimes I wonder how we existed actually. So we're 8 people, just us. We had to produce a lot of food. That's all the food there was.
Mum came there to a fuel stove and nothing else.
When one thinks about my mum cooking Christmas dinner, with a fuel stove, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and we had to cook the Christmas pudding in a fuel copper out in the backyard.
Washing was an outside copper, fuel lit underneath it. And I remember when Paul was born and she was trying to wash nappies, I just remember her going off her brain. When the nappies came out of the water, they were all brown.
No sewer, no septic. We had a pan
My father used to make me help him empty the pan, which means taking it out from under the seat, putting this lid on it, and then having to carry it down the hill and bury it. And it was the most disgusting job you can imagine. And I was only a young kid, like 10, 11-year-old. It was beyond my capacity, and quite often, going down the hill, I slipped over and the stuff went everywhere.
Virtually no windows, as you can see, and flies, trying to keep the flies off the food.
And no power and fans or anything like that.
There was nothing to keep things cold, really. And everything was rationed like butter. And when she got the butter, they used to take it down to the creek with sandbag over the safe, try and stop it from melting away altogether. And I know sometimes it did melt away.
Cliff Maslin was a builder. He built the Tabor House, which was on the corner of Diamond and Amethyst, for Albert Affleck. And that, of course, was where they had the first meetings of the Progress Association, before the hall was built.
Grandfather Steinbeck was the first president, and he actually guaranteed the loan for the Progress Hall to be built. He was very much a leader in the community.
The thing that it was really concerned about initially was a post office. And this was because most of the people who were living here needed their pension checks. Quite a few of the early permanent residents were returned servicemen.
Well, they were trying to improve the road into Pearl Beach because it was all a dirt road, and in the rain it was impassable. So that was a big thing for them.
They had enough nous to say, this little community is going to need somewhere to have a base. And they were able to rustle up enough funds to buy a block of land. It probably only cost them £6 or £10, but that was a lot of money in those days.
It was quite a dynamic group, really, I think. They did a lot of good for the community.
They were bold enough to go out and borrow money to build this little community centre, and they made it work. Cliff, of course, then organised and supervised the building of the first part of the hall with volunteers.
I had a sense of pride in building the community hall that my grandfather had had a pivotal role in fundraising for and having built.
My grandfather, William Frost, helped get the Progress Association off the ground with the initial purchase of the land and then later the building of the hall. Later became one of the early presidents of the Progress Association, but I understand that his reign was a little bit like Robert Mugabe in that he wouldn't leave. He was eventually ousted to be replaced by someone a little perhaps more democratic.
I think it's great we've got the hall, and it's amazing to think that we own the hall. That's a very unusual situation.
And it's always a lovely feeling knowing the history of that community hall and seeing my niece Lily in musical productions there as well, as Annie Pop had been involved in the Glee Club.
We have to preserve it. It's the heart of the community, and it was built for that, hand-built by original settlers.
To serve the community and have an awful lot of fun doing so.
But bringing people together in a whole range of things, not just advocacy, but service and also entertainment.
I mean, I've done the hall bookings and there's so much going on. The last new activity was the darts night, which John Greenway started. It's really the hub of the community.
Oh, yeah, Monday mahjong, Tuesday craft and Friday choir. It's a second home and it's lovely. I like to go down to the meetings, I like to find out what's going on, and it's social afterwards because they have drinks and nibbles. So what doesn't get discussed at the meetings can get discussed afterwards.
I regard the association as being our little parliament. The community should feel invited to use the floor to put up its proposal, and that's where the discussion happens, and that's where progress takes place.
The idea of progress has changed. Before World War II, progress meant modern convenience and technology.
It was really about getting services and amenities. But later, the notion of progress changed and it became very much about conservation. And that was tied to things like the natural environment, but it also became about conserving the way things had been. And then, of course, people started calling the Progress Association the No Progress Association. And that did change.
This meant maintaining a balance between modern amenities and protecting the environment.
Yeah, it's the people, it's the vibe, it's the people.
The community's wonderful, people are wonderful, and they're so beautifully spirited. And I think the place has got such a lovely feel, you know. People seem to be vibrant and healthy and living their life and enjoying the environment, and you know, there's lots of people swimming and walking and lots of dogs, and it's just such a lovely atmosphere, I think.
The chilled coming of age and a really chilled, relaxed childhood.
I ride my scooter around and it's very close to all of my friends that live here as well, and my parents don't have to worry where I'm going.
Pearl Beach is a place like no other.
A degree of calmness and sensibility.
And the trees and the bird life, I just love here. It's just amazing.
Got a really nice energy for just focusing, and I know that's why a lot of writers and artists spend time here.
There are so many things all together in Pearl Beach, things that bring out the best in people, that bring a kind of peace and a kind of contentment that you're then ready to share and express something of yourself.
What a community. What a wonderful view. You don't need to go anywhere else. If you are in Pearl Beach, you are one of the lucky ones. I've got this place, I'm alone now, but I hope I spend the rest of my life here.